How to clear the 6 DSCR conditions that cost you 14 days without hiring more staff. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you start doing investor loans. Your files don't die from declines. Declines are rare and they're honest. Your files die from conditions. You submit, you feel good, and 4 days later, a list comes back. You chase the borrower. They take 3 days. Underwriting looks again. And somewhere in there, the borrower who was excited on Monday starts quietly wondering whether you know what you're doing. That round trip costs you the better part of 2 weeks and a little of the relationship every single time. Here's what makes it fixable. It's the same 6 conditions over and over across lenders, across programs. And every one of them is knowable before you hit submit. So let's go through all 6, exactly what underwriting is checking on each one, and then I'll give you the workflow that pre-answers all of them in about 30 minutes. Condition 1, rent support. This is the most conditioned item on DSCR files, and it's almost always the same mistake. You calculated coverage off the rent the borrower told you. Underwriting calculates it off the 1007 market rent schedule or the signed lease, and on most programs, they take the lower of the two. So if your borrower says the unit rents for $2,600 and the appraiser's 1007 comes back at $2,350, your 1.12 coverage is actually 1.01. And now you're renegotiating leverage on a file you already quoted. What to check before you submit? Do you have the actual signed lease, all pages, signed by both parties? Does the rent on that lease match the rent in your calculation? If the unit is vacant, are you relying entirely on the 1007? And does your program allow that? And if it's a short-term rental, does this lender take a 12-month operating history, or do they want long-term market rent? 4 questions, 5 minutes. Condition 2, taxes and insurance. This one is quiet and it's brutal. On a purchase, the tax line on the listing is the seller's tax bill, and the seller may have owned that property for 15 years with a homestead exemption on it. Your borrower is buying it as an investment in an entity at today's price. That property gets reassessed. So $700 a year on the listing becomes $2,800 a year, and that difference comes straight out of your coverage ratio. Same story with insurance. An estimate is not a quote. And in a lot of markets, the real quote comes back well above what you assume. So run taxes at the local millage rate times the actual purchase price, not the seller's old bill, and get a real binder from a real carrier, not a placeholder. Condition 3, entity documents. Almost every DSCR loan closes in an LLC, and almost nobody checks the paperwork until underwriting asks for it. You need the articles of organization, the operating agreement, the EIN letter, and a certificate of good standing that hasn't expired. Then here's the part people miss. The guarantor has to actually be an owner of that entity at the percentage the program requires, and the operating agreement has to say so. If your borrower formed the entity last month with an online service and never signed the operating agreement, that is a condition. And it's a condition that takes days to clear because fixing it involves somebody who doesn't work for you. Condition 4, reserves. Reserves are measured after closing, not before. Your borrower has $90,000 in the bank, and they're bringing $73,000 to the table between down payment and closing costs. That leaves $17,000. If the program wants 6 months of principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and that payment is $2,000 a month, they need 12, so they're fine, barely. Now add the large deposit rule. Any deposit that isn't obviously payroll has to be sourced. And if $40,000 of that $90,000 came in as a wire from a family member 3 weeks ago, that is a condition, probably a gift letter, possibly a real problem. Pull 2 months of statements yourself and ask about every deposit that looks unusual. Condition 5, title and vesting. This is the one that kills cash out refinances. Your borrower bought the property in their personal name, and now they want to refinance it in an LLC, or they bought it in one entity and then formed a new one. Every program has a rule about vesting and how long it has been in place. And the deed transfer that fixes it takes time and sometimes triggers a transfer tax. Also, on any refinance, pull the actual payoff statement, not the borrower's memory of their balance, and check whether the existing loan carries a prepayment penalty. A 4% prepay on a $200,000 loan is $8,000. That has to come from somewhere, and you want to know that today, not at the closing table. Condition 6, property condition. The appraisal comes back and the photos tell a story your borrower didn't. A condition rating of C4 or C5, a missing water heater, a roof at the end of its life, an open permit nobody closed out. Any one of those turns into a subject to repair appraisal, which means a repair escrow, or a reinspection, which means weeks. So before the appraisal is ordered, ask the borrower directly, is anything not working? Any open permits? Any deferred maintenance a stranger would notice? And on a fix and flip exiting into a DSCR loan, is the work actually finished? Or is it finished in the sense that it will be finished by the time the appraiser gets there? So that's the 6. Rent support, taxes and insurance, entity documents, reserves, title investing, property condition. Now the workflow, because reading that list is not the same as running it. And running it by hand on every file is exactly the kind of work that quietly doesn't happen at 4:30 on a Friday. Here's the pre-submission audit. Take your lender's actual condition list, the real one, from the last 5 files they conditioned you on, and paste it into an AI model, along with the documents from the file you're about to submit. Then give it this job. You are auditing a DSCR loan file before submission. Compare every number that appears in more than one document. The rent on the lease versus the rent in my coverage calculation versus the 1007. The purchase price on the contract versus the loan application. The borrower name on the entity documents versus the title commitment versus the guarantor on the application. Then list every place they disagree. List every document from my lender's condition list that is missing from this file, and produce 2 things. 1, a memo to me of what underwriting will most likely condition. 2, a short list of exactly what to request from the borrower today, written in plain English I can paste straight into an email. And here's the one rule, and it matters more than the prompt does. The model flags, you verify. It is genuinely excellent at noticing that the same number appears in 3 documents with 3 different values, which, if you look at your condition history, is most of what conditions actually are. It is not the thing signing off that the coverage math is right. You are. Use it as a second set of eyes that never gets tired on a Friday. Never as the underwriter. Run that on your next file. 30 minutes on the front end against 2 weeks of round trips on the back end. Against 2 weeks of round trips on the back end. That is the entire trade. And it's the closest thing to free time this business has. If you want the full version of that audit prompt, plus the rest of the origination prompts we run, the link's in my bio. And if you do investor loans, follow along here, because this is all we post.